How good's this, boys?
Yeah.
What a day.
How are
So
you?
good to see you.
Enjoying the sun?
Oh, didn't expect just the luxury. Look at this throne. Is this great or what? I'm just going to take the shoes off and just get earthing and one with the sand of northern beaches.
That's it.
It's good.
Curly, you're home.
I'm here. I'm home.
This is it. The beaches are one of your favourite spots, we know. You enjoy the beach, so that's why we're here. And what we're here to do with you, I guess, is almost film a digital biography with you. Let's chat through your life. I mean, what we're trying to do here is sort of create a piece where, I mean, one of your family members could look back if they ever wanted to know your whole life story, at least up until this point. So I guess the best way to do that is let's start with your earliest memory, Cam.
Do you know what, mate? Even saying that, talking about that, and I talk a lot about, I know it's legacy, because if you talk about legacy, it means sort of you've passed on, but that's not a bad thing. We're here in the present, we're here in the moment. Just even talking about that, because I've got two beautiful sons currently in the moment. Your parents and the people you want to touch, your wife. So when you talk about that, about someone who would want to know about your genuine life, about your whole life, I find that really incredible. And I think about the beautiful loved ones that I've lost in my life and how much I think everyone would have loved the opportunity to do something like that. Because you'd watch it over and over, and there might be some pain involved during that time because you're missing a loved one, but my goodness, there'd be so much love and energy around it to be able to hear not just their highlights, but talk about their whole life and how they're feeling. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity for me to be able to do this. And I sort of just left it. I just came, arrived, and you boys are doing an incredible job of setting up. But just even that thought process of it just shows where you boys are on a different sort of scale in life.
We appreciate that.
Of understanding that, because everyone gets not everyone gets, but you get the podcast and the highlights and the expert opinions and thoughts. But sometimes people just want to go deeper about what's going on and how they arrived there. And I'm sure, who knows, in years to come, my kids will be able to watch this and actually learn a little bit more. Or someone that wants to go dive a little bit deeper into my life, or whether I've inspired them or touched them had an impact in a certain way. But even for me to talk about it's actually quite healing. And until I actually heard you say that, I was actually feeling a little bit anxious. But I think I just took a breath and just settled in and just go, okay, just roll. Because there's so much, and I don't know about your past guests, whether they sort of want to rush through things and like, because that was my first initial reaction. Oh, I'll go through it. But I just found a moment when you blokes were talking, or when you blokes were just setting up, I just had to take a few deep breaths and just ground myself in the sand and have a moment of gratitude to just be really present, to just sort of feel, let's roll with this. This is a beautiful moment in time. So very grateful.
Man, thank you
for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for those kind words. That's very nice. And when you were going to be a great person to do this with, because I think you respect the idea and the concept, and obviously you have after what you've just said. It's a cool opportunity to, like, when are you ever going to do this by yourself? You're never going to sit in front of a camera and go through everything by yourself. And maybe you think about your timeline or certain parts of your life, like by yourself, but to be able to speak it aloud, externalize it, is almost, you just never give yourself the chance. So that being said, we're keen to start hearing about your young childhood, because that's not something we know much about. But do you remember your earliest moment? Take us from that earliest moment and take us all the way through to the present day.
Wow, life of Cam Merchant. My childhood was beautiful. I had a very fulfilling, happy childhood. Only child. Parents living on the northern shore of Sydney, in Killarney, a little place called Killarney Heights. You go back there now and it feels so small, but at the time it felt so big. And it was a fulfilling, joyful, happy neighbourhood and growing and upbringing, because all I did was want to play sport. All I want to do was just run around. All I want to do was hang with, chill out with mates. And I got that opportunity. I think one of my one of my earliest memories actually didn't happen to be in, one of my earliest memories didn't actually happen to be in the neighbourhood. It actually happened to be overseas, funny enough. And I think it was Disneyland. And it was on a ride, It's a Small World After All at Disneyland. And I can't remember how, I'm 3 or 4. And I went on this ride. No, apologies. One of the earliest memories I had was Disneyland. And throughout one of the earliest memories I had at Disneyland was a ride, Pirates of the Caribbean. And all I remember, because I went on it so many times, I think that's why a memory sticks in there. And it was me on the boat going past the dog with the keys in its mouth and the prisoner in there trying to reach for the keys. And from my old man telling me, I went on this ride 12 times in a row until it got to the point where mum and dad were exhausted. And this is how life changes though. And the operator of the ride said, leave your son with me. I'll keep going with him, and you guys go have a great day. And I did. And I think that's one of the earliest memories. So, but if that's a representation of my first memory, Disneyland, it's joy, it's fulfilling, it's happiness. And then all it was sport, it was cricket, it was footy, it was hanging out in the backyard with dad, in the hallway, playing cricket. And that's all I ever loved doing, I think, just as a kid. Swimming, Aussie summers, barbecues, and and what I grew up with that aligned me was Ghostbusters. Been all-time favourite movie of all time. Ghostbusters brought it out in 1984. My birthday was the 4th of January, 1984. Ghostbusters 2 was brought out in 1989. I saw that about 6 times at the movies when it first came out. I had birthday parties resembling Ghostbusters parties with friends, and it was a beautiful upbringing. And I've always fortunate enough to say that I did have a really lovely upbringing. I was happy. I wasn't too spoiled. My folks had a really lovely balance of of finding a way to make sure I was happy, but not going over the top. But what I do know, I had parents that were really present, that really cared for me, that we really connected, and at a time when they're your world and they had ultimate presence and time for me. And I think that's so important as a kid. So if I look back at that, I just think, wow, that's certainly, fast forward today with 2 kids, it gives me the ultimate example of how to parent. And yes, things have changed, but if I look back at it, geez, they were there at any time of need. Through all the emotions, good, bad, ugly, it didn't matter. So that allowed me to have a really pleasant upbringing with not too many worries, that gave me the opportunity to, I guess, find my personality and who I genuinely was. Growing up in Killarney Heights, I did everything. I swam, I ran, played tennis, cricket, any sport, anything running around. It was always a huge part of me. I had 2 beautiful parents, Margaret and Russell Merchant, and throughout that time, that was it was my world, really. That was really my world.
What was primary school like for you?
Primary school was fun. It was walking every day because we were just in walking distance to primary school. It was walking. I always loved the thought that it's not what teachers teach you, it's how they make you feel. And I had just teachers that, regardless, made you feel like you were their world as well, and that you meant something, that you were important, that you were seen. And and it was great. I had a really lovely time. I sort of took on all the sports. Academically wise, I figured I don't know. When do you start to figure out that you're not the smartest? But it was a great time anyway. I do remember one of my, it's so funny when you piece everything back, right? One of the biggest moments in primary school that I do remember that shaped a lot of my life was, I remember the teacher asking, what is today? It was a new day of the month. And my mum always said, oh, it's rabbits. In New Zealand, it's this thing, rabbits, and new day of the month, and you just say rabbits every new day. So the teacher asked, well, rabbits, what's something when you come into a new month? And I said, oh, rabbits, because that's what my mum said. And then all the kids laughed at me. And I remember just going, oh, I will never say that ever again. And you look back at that and you're like, oh, was that the first instance of when you said something and you were made fun of and laughed at that gives you a complex, that gives you an insecurity that potentially shapes and forms of how your personality is or how you feel about saying something or doing something down the line? And it certainly did. I think I'm starting to heal now, but when you connect the dots years and years later of why you do the things, I pieced back to a certain specific moment in that classroom in year 1 or something that gave you the, oh, don't believe everything you hear and or don't shout your mouth off too early. And that's just, I look back and go, fuck, that was a sad thing. How cruel kids can be to make you feel something certain in a moment. But none of us know. But regardless of that, primary school was a great fun.
Yeah.
Lovely moment. Walking home from school, my folks had a baby shop in the heart of Killarney Heights shopping centre. And my mum was an entrepreneurial genius. And she created this baby shop from her home that moved into some little squash centre, little underground, to then taking it in an actual shop all the way to Killarney Heights. And it was her creation, it was her invention. So it was a baby shop, but she did all her own personalised, custom-made Manchester and sheets. So a customer could go, having a baby, I love Peter Rabbit or this, and she'd have all the samples, and then she would go and make the sheet set, she'd go make lampshades, she'd go make bumper bars, she'd make it all. And she was like the first of her kind. I always remember looking at my folks just going, you're very clever, and you don't know the effect of sort of money and success, but it seemed to always be that we were always, the shop was always busy. I heard nothing but compliments of what my mum was doing, and I saw the business grow and grow and grow. And then I'd walk home from school every day and just kick the footy around and watch them, but how hard they worked and what they did. And that was a really unique and wonderful time as well, watching. And then my dad came into the business and they grew the business from there, which was unreal. So until she grew it and grew it and grew it, and she was at the same stage of like baby bunting and baby co and things like that. So she was on that rise, first of her kind of what she did, and making parents feel incredible. But then she got sick and had to close the business down, and that's always been a sad moment where her entrepreneurial genius was sort of just cut short through health, do you know? Yeah, that was sort of primary school in a nutshell. First kiss at, what was that, 12? Name was Revel Pointing. No relation to Ricky Pointing. I wish there was. Geez, that was a moment, your first ever kiss. And it was sort of like I'm behind a big voltage things at a playground. And you sort of dared to kiss someone, and it sort of happened. I remember my first kiss was a beauty. I got just the lips just perfect. And I thought, geez, I'm a good kisser. Worked out that the second time I did it, I went in with mouth wide way too much. and ruined it all. So that was the last of that. You learn very quickly, don't you? But that was a moment. That was a moment. Your first sort of girlfriend, and you sort of just realizing things as you pick up things as you go along, or your friends that are in the local area that you want to hang out with. And it was always a good time.
And I guess, like, what was the coming of age period like for you? Teenagehood, high school?
I think from the coming of age for me would have been from public school to high school at 13, to trying to figure out where you're going. And I ended up going to St Pius ex-college in Chatswood, and it was an all-boys school. I knew a couple of guys there, but one, a good mate, Shane Cleary, through cricket, that I knew him before we went there. And I look back at it and you just go, it was just the best, because we've got our 15-year Christmas annual party coming up with the boys that we've known for a long, long time. Graduated in 2000, so it's over 25 years ago. It might even be more than that. I think it might be 17 years. I can't remember, but that was a pivotal moment, because you go from that to a whole new depth of friendships, of learning. Still have no idea who you are, what you want, but you do have an idea of what makes you tick and what excites you and what you're good at, what your strengths are. And I always took that cricket and soccer or footy was my strength into the new playground, so to speak. So that was the way you connected with friends and people, and stamped your authority in a high school setting. And catching the bus all the time, all the way there, was always good fun. Walking from home, catching the bus, you're seen as a big boy now at 13, wearing a blazer, walking with a Discman. Walking with a Discman. I had either Metallica Black as one of my first CDs. Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince was another one.
Your good taste.
It was a array. Even the 12th Man was just funny. It was just great to listen to. Wired, World of Sports. Yeah.
What was it like in terms of sport? It's something that you've been involved with a lot through your life. I guess you were saying that's what you sort of started to identify with, being a sportsman, I guess, and that was the thing you could sort of rely on as your personality. I guess everyone picks that at school, right? You pick the sort of category you sit in. What was that like for you? Did you start to learn almost like you had opportunities to do this outside of school? Was it just fun for you? Maybe you could run us through that, I guess, your sporting journey.
My sporting journey was always a passion. I loved it. It just brought me a lot of joy. I loved it. Somewhere along the way, I figured out I was half decent at it. But no matter what, I'd come home from school, from primary school to high school, and out the front of my house I had the tree, and I have the stocking with the ball into it, and I would just hit and knock and just for hours and hours on end. And you can imagine what the neighbours, they just go, fuck, it's 3:30 already, and Cameron will be out there for 2 hours just hitting this ball back. And I just had creative imagination and thought processes and scenarios just wrapped up in my head, and I'd hit balls and I'd make my way to, get off the mark in front of a packed house at whatever stadium it might be. Then I'd get to 50 and raise the bat, then I'd get to 100, and I'd just keep going, and I'd hit cover drive and booming down the ground, and it was it was where I'd shape my footwork and how I'd play. And then after every session, you'd always see the grass patch of where exactly I'd play. It would just be burnt out and it would just never come back. Years to come, you just see this bare patch of grass, and you could always just see that's where I played. That's where my footwork ran best. And that was all I ever wanted to do. Even through high school, I felt like I didn't excel in school. I passed. I always just wanted to pass. That was okay. 60% was over me. And I always say to high school students now, HSC does not define you. Don't let it. It will not. I turned out okay. But that was always, I was never one of my biggest things. It was I just wanted to play cricket. And then I started to make some rep teams along the way, sort of Manly, and started to do well, started to make some New South Wales junior rep teams, and I thought I'm okay at this. And again, one of the biggest things I'm always grateful for is that, my goodness, my dad did some kilometres in the car, taking me from Sydney to Gosford to Newcastle, over the Mooney Bridge. You know, I'd never see it because I'd be asleep in the car before we even got there. But the amount of hours and days that they would just put in, and they would just put in his time to support me and to help me and whatever I needed in the cricketing department. It was that. If we wanted to go down the squash courts and play or go to the nets, he was just always there. And I think that certainly helps. My dad was a cricketer for sort of New South Wales Colts and North Sydney, and so he loved it. So there was definitely a connection there, and he brought me on through his sporting passion that obviously connected through to me. My mum was a surfer, so she just wanted me to be down the beach, which is quite funny that we actually are down here at the beach at the moment. But yeah, she was a surfer from New Zealand, always just wanted to do that. She was involved in surf lifesaving, but then the water never, ever interested me. I remember they brought me down to Nippers once, and I had a crack at Nippers, trying to run around the surf and around the flags, and I just was like, this is not for me, I'm out. I just dived and just ran, and that was the end of me. So every time we came down to the beach, I'd always wanted to be with a tennis ball or something like that, or a ball, but I think some mates got me into boogie boarding and bodyboarding and stuff like that, and I just wasn't that interested. But now it's funny, there's still a connection of just, I don't know, it's so pure from a more of a spiritual and emotional and nervous system sense of what the beach and the ocean and the water does to one, to me personally, to live close to it, to be down here, something where I'll almost be down at the beach every day, if not every second day, to either meditate. So it's so funny that once upon a time I just had zero interest in it, to now it's a place. I still don't love the beach. Getting sand, it's just a messy place. But the rock pool and the beach and what it stands for is beautiful. So it was always sports that just drove me.
Yeah. And leaving, I guess, like moving on from, let's look back on, like, let's just say 18-year-old Cam. He's finished school. I don't know if you did your HSC or not, or you finished earlier, but you've finished school. What's going through your head at 18? Where to next?
A pivotal moment in my life was, and leading up to that, was quite seamless. Like there wasn't too many bumps in the roads. No, I broke my leg at 14 playing rugby. It was my second year of rugby, and I was starting to really make something of it. And I was sort of teetering on cricket or rugby at the time. My goal was always to play rugby, go to the top, and then make it through the Manly Sea Eagles. And I was playing rugby, and this huge human ran at me at the age of 13, and everyone was falling off him. No one could tackle him. And I was a fullback, and he kept coming towards the line. And I remember looking around, going, "Is anyone gonna take this on? All right, I'll do it as always. Here we go." And I got under him. Ball came loose, but he fell on my leg and snapped it, and it was horrific. And that was a really pivotal time because I was sort of like choosing what do I do. It made it a pretty easy decision in the end because rugby then wasn't for me. It was the cricket that I ended up choosing. But I snapped my leg, and I was in a cast for 12 weeks. And as a youngster, trying to figure that out, it broke my growth plate, it broke my tib and fib, and I had a cast up to my thigh for 12 weeks, and it was debilitating, realistically. And yeah, I had to. Yeah, it was a really tricky time at 13.
That's a full break.
Snap.
Like snap in half.
Oh, it was horrific. I can still hear the, whenever I really go back there, and I sort of remember my mum running onto the field, and I remember just looking up, it was like, boys, really? Like, it came to this. Any danger of putting your body on the line next time? But it was 12 weeks, and there was rehabilitation. I thought everything would always be fine from there, but it turns out it wasn't. Like, it broke my growth plate, which means that even coming to now, and I was about this size when I was 13 or 14, so I was a big lad, and I'm basically the same size now, because what it did, it broke my growth plate there, and what actually happened was this leg never continued to grow, but this one did. So this continued to grow, and then as time went on, this one just couldn't grow anymore because it couldn't keep up with this, because this one wasn't supporting it, so it just stopped. And then now if you look at my hips and back are an absolute mess. So I wear this really attractive thing in every shoe that I have. It's basically a, look at the size of it. It's like a 2-inch or inch sort of heel.
Wow.
That I have to put in every shoe. If you see my heavies, you see my thongs, they're basically got one on my left is normal, and then I've got to put 2 Havianas and glue them together. I've got to sand one of them off, glue them both together, so they're about that big. And I just walk around, or at home, I either wear just the one thong on this one. And it's so funny because anytime Jules puts a post out or comments or video, or people just see me at home, they go, oh man, life must be pretty tough. Like, you're a busy dad, you've only got one thong. I'm like, oh, no, and everyone just always comments like, why has he got one thong on? Why? It's like, because my back's a mess, and if I don't wear the one thong, I'm in trouble. So that was a really pivotal time, because it stunted sort of everything that I was going through, and I still have issues today with back and things like that. So that was at 13, now 41. So that was, that was a time to go through that. What led up to that was at 16, going through year 11 and a half, my mum got cancer and she got sick. And I was in the middle of year 11. It's a really strong time. You're forming strong bonds with your mate that you've known for a long time. And basically the doctor said to her, if you want to survive, obviously there's treatment, but you need less stress, so business, and better weather, climate. So basically they're in that decision right then. They shut down the business and had to move to the Gold Coast for better climate and better weather. Sold up the house, and this happens in a 15, 16-year-old, all in a moment under your nose, where life is just coasting. Life is really good. And so I ended up living in Sydney with some mates for probably about another 2 or 3 months, because I wasn't ready to go. My folks had gone, and I stayed here just to finish, I think, the halfway through year 11 off. And then they moved to the Gold Coast, and I had to follow suit. So I went up there, found a new school. It was a co-ed school, and basically started a whole new life. And I just remember there was an exciting part of it because it was a new chapter. I'm always open for new beginnings and the excitement and what the opportunities that life has for you. But at the same time, you're leaving such a critical part of your life behind in terms of your best mates, and you're in another state. And it wasn't as easy. You couldn't just, FaceTiming and calling. So I remember being on the Telstra phones and the pay phones, and there was this hack. And you put a $2 coin in, you get a Macca's plastic straw, and you could nick the $2 coin, and it would come back out. And I'd continuously do that, and I'd just call, and we'd just talk and chat constantly over and over for hours at the local supermarket. But because you're missing out, that was a classic case of FOMO, right? You're missing out on all these beautiful moments, or the parties, or everything that's going on. And I had my first real girlfriend at that time, that, funny enough, my first love at that time, and we had to split because I had to go. And funny enough, she ended up getting him on with one of my best mates at the time. That was destroying. Really, made it really hard at the time. Yeah, it was tough. So every time I came back, we ended up getting a punch on, actually, over it. Funny enough, in Chatswood, in the middle of Chatswood Chase, full punch on. I just thought it was a dog act.
Why can't I see that with you?
Yeah.
I cannot imagine it, but like I can at the same time.
Yeah, gotcha. I just like, how could you do that to me? And because I was so in love with her as well, it just really hurt. And then I think I just kept niggling him. It's like, kept niggling, and then he finally just threw one at me, and I was like, all right, we're on. Here we go. First full punch on. And we didn't hold back either. But yeah, moving up to the Gold Coast was exciting. It was a whole new place. And my friends, even from the Gold Coast school, you're starting fresh, new again. It's never easy because again, you've got to establish yourself. You've got to figure out where you want to be, where's your place in this community, in this society. It's never easy with anyone in life in general, but to continue to do that is always tricky. So I found my place, I found my people, I found my friends, and it all happened over a bottle of Passion Pop, really. Over one Saturday night, I just happened to be out with my cousin, and that group that I idolised from school just happened to be out. And I think I just got a bottle of Passion Pop. My cousin bought it for me, and I just showed him how cool I was by sculling this bottle of Passion Pop. And he was like, that's the new guy. He's awesome. He crushes Passion Pop for fun. He's in. Come on. And what's great about that is we're still friends to this day, that whole group. Beautiful, beautiful group from Gold Coast. And I look back now and go, how lucky am I to have this incredible group of friends from the Gold Coast school to my Sydney school, and still. So I'm always blessed about that, but it was still never hard. And you look back on so many years, and that moment there had such a big role to play in the way I made decisions throughout my whole life, because I missed out on my mates and always thinking that Sydney was home, that Sydney was home, my mates were home, my mates were it, and I always had to be there. And along the way, it became detrimental to some of the choices that I made to my life that ended up bringing me back to Sydney.
So at what point, what age are you coming back to Sydney?
So that was 16, 18. 18 was my first. I started to play first grade cricket up in the Gold Coast, and I started to make a name for myself when I debuted with the greats of Andrew Simons, Scotty Muller, some real Australian greats. And I'm a 16-year-old kid debuting with these guys that I idolise and look up to, and they were just such incredible role models at the time to a 16-year-old kid. They were playing for Australia. They were touring around the world, and they just had nothing but the time of day to chat to a 16-year-old kid and saying, what do you want? What makes you tick? Where are you? And I certainly take as an inspiration from Andrew Simons to where I am today and how I look after youngsters coming through as well. He was just such a great inspiration for me, and how you should be treated no matter what status you are. It's always a humbling experience and a humbling human being. God bless him. And so that was pretty cool. And then at the age of 18, we finished school. I had about 4 different schoolies because of schoolies up on the Gold Coast. I lived on the Gold Coast, so I just did schoolies either twice every year or continued. And at the age of 18, I got my first contract to go to England on my own for cricket. And I took off there. And a big pivotal moment in my life that I always had questions about was my mum, before I was about to leave to England, my mum sat me down and she said, I just want to let you know, I know you've always been asking questions, but your father isn't your real father. And I remember just thinking, it was like a big relief. And I'm 18 at this stage, and I've got dark skin, dark hair. My parents are both blonde, light skin. So I always asked the question, but they sort of always refused it and denied it and things like that. And I was like, thank you. So basically it works out that my mum was my birth mum, and my father, Rusty, he was my father from birth, but not my biological dad. So it answered a lot of questions. And I'll always see my dad, Rusty, as my father. Without doubt, he was with me from birth. He put the cricket bat underneath my arm and a little Australian cap on my head in the nursery when I was born. Right, so that's where the spell started of cricket. The nurses chased him out. He was at the test. He was hammered. God bless him. That's where he started. He will always be my father. It just happened to be at the time when the doctors said to my mum, your time's running out. I think she was 41, which just so happens to be the same age that Jules gave birth, or 39, sorry. Same age, Mum was 39, same age as Jules when she gave birth to our first child as well, Ollie. Basically said, you're running out of time, you need to make this happen. And she was just seeing someone at the time, but planned it, boom. All of a sudden, she was pregnant, I came into the world, he doesn't even know. Like, he wouldn't even know me. Wouldn't even know. So, yeah.
I know that about you.
Yeah, so I always find that so interesting because from what I do know, he has got children. So I've got some brothers and sisters somewhere. And being an only child, it was always like, oh. But it never made me any more less loving of my father, Rusty. Ever, because he was my dad. He was my number one, still is. There's slight curious things that come into it. I've seen photos with a big tash coming across, and I just look identical to him, which is hilarious. Big bouffant, moustache, like 80s sort of tash, and I was like, yeah, you're the man. I think it's like photos of him, it's like mum and like some other. It's like, yeah, you're the guy. Awesome. So, which is really interesting, but I was content with it. I was fine. I had an auntie once say to me, your personality is so similar to your father because he was in hospitality. So she's like, he was just really sort of just calm and chilled and warm. And he was in hospitality industry. So he was always making sure that everyone was else okay. And she was just like, you are to have the personality of your father, which actually was all I really needed, to be honest. It was really lovely. But mum was always mum. And to talk to dad about that was hard initially because I guess it's like, when are you not going to not find out about that at some stage? Yeah. But it didn't, and we but he was okay initially and still is fine now, and I give him that reassurance that no. I've never really looked for him. I don't know. So all I know, his name is our bear. I think he lived in Camperdown or Kempsey or something like that. And then so mum wanted to tell me before I went on my first, adult travel trip on my own. She just wanted to let you know that. And then I went to cricket. So that was my first initial experience on my own in a club as the pro. But you're 18 and you look back and you go, you're still a baby. You're traveling the world. You're at a club. You've got responsibility. You're playing cricket, which is a dream, but you're still such a baby. It's just incredible. And I learned a lot. I learned plenty traveling the world with other youngsters and elder people at the club. But I also did learn that I get homesick, and that was the first of it as well. I remember sort of at one stage, a little bit sad, counting down the days till where I could go home. And I did, and came home, everything's good, but you realise not much changes, but you're hanging out with mates again, you're having parties, and you're catching up because I was the first to go overseas, and that was that, really. Continued to find my sort of path, play cricket, doing well. Until I felt there was a time in my life where the Gold Coast just wasn't it for me. It wasn't right. It didn't feel right. And I remember not making a Queensland under-19s team, and it really cut to the core. I just wasn't me. I wasn't the same person that I knew that I was, and I was starting to lose a little bit of me, and I was missing the core of what makes you feel happy and the joy. And they were my friends, and that was Sydney, and I just felt that every time I went there, I felt this was me. And it got to a stage, I just said to my folks, I said, I want to go back. I want to move back to Sydney. And I did, and I was 20, and I moved back. I remember getting on a flight, and I had a couple of big suitcases, and basically that was my life. And I moved in with some mates on a friend's place who helped me sort of get to a stage where I could. And cricket was always the thing. But what was crazy when I moved back, I thought, this is it. But then you got to realise you got to start fending for yourself. And I remember doing any job that I can. One of the first jobs that I had was as a garbo. And I just remember just thinking, all right, anything to just survive, anything to do to get through. And I lasted 2 days as a garbage punt.
I thought you were going to be like, I lasted 2 years.
Oh,
it was a period of my life.
2 days, 48 hours. It was so tough. And people are probably thinking, are you kidding? How tough is it to press a button, go and collect some? Back then, back in my day, you were like the bottles. So they had the black containers, and people get bottles and put them in and leave them out. Right? So you'd be riding on the back of the garbage truck, and then you'd have to stop and then pick up this tray full of bottles and hoy them over your head into the actual garbage truck. And I thought, this is going to be the best because I'm going to get so fit running up hills. And I imagine myself like running up like Avalon Hills, Newport Hills, and I did. And then I started to lag, and the driver was like, mate, would you fucking hurry up? We're behind time and I want to get a smoko. but because I just bit and just heave these things over. And then every time you mess up and a bottle would smash, you'd have to fucking stop the truck and you have to get out and sweep it. And then I just kept doing that and messing up along the way. I was like, no, let me just run a bit more up the hill. And he's like, get in the fucking truck, youngster. We're not having this. It's costing me time. I lasted 2 days. Same with vegetation. Vegetation, you had to physically pick it up and throw it in. It wasn't just the whole automatic thing. So I lasted 2 days, and that was the end of me. And I remember having so much respect for garbage truck. People that work for the garbage, and it was brilliant. But it showed me again, okay, that's not for me. What is? And then so I go from sort of job to job, still trying to figure it out. Worked at Mick Paulley's. I think everyone did that was playing cricket. Mick Paulley's sports store, and you learn so much. You learn about connections. You learn about humans. You learn about conversations. You learn about sales. And Mick Paulley was the first person that put me on my sort of spiritual path, and the first book he ever gave me. When he saw that I was on this roller coaster of emotions, especially through cricket. Cricket's it's black and white. Right? Cricket is, you can be sitting in the penthouse and score runs one week, and you can be sitting the following week in the shithouse because of the scores. And I think that's where personally, and a lot of sportsmen do, is their numbers or their businesses or their deals, they let them define them. And that for me personally was cricket, my scores defined me and how my moods were going to be. And that was a really tricky thing, especially when you're trying to chase the goal, you're trying to chase the thing, the long term. And when you put all your eggs in that basket, it's never easy. So I think he saw me, Mick Paulley, because he'd gone on that journey, and he became my first ever mentor. He saw me one day I'd be up and scoring runs and everything was great, to not scoring anything, and life was a fucking disaster. So he as the guru, mentor, phenomenal human being that he is, he was aware of this, he acknowledged this, and gave me my first book, which was Deepak Chopra, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And it's still to this day, I read it even on holidays a couple of weeks ago. And it was my first spiritual journey, the first start of it. It opened my world, and I would highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest books. Just the connections and the meanings that you have to so many things, and you can always relate back to them. And that started everything for me in terms of spiritual journey. And I was forever grateful of that. Once I got back to Sydney, funny enough, when you feel that you're in a better place and surrounded by the people that you want to be surrounded by, and this is how I just felt at the time, you just feel better and things start to go right. You start to excel in your behavior, your performances, the connections you have around you. And you start to realize the things that are serving you, you want to dive into them a bit more consistently. No matter where you are, who you are, what you are. If you start to acknowledge those things and you want to surround yourself by those people or those environments, that's what's going to make you the best person. I started to realize that. So I was like, Sydney is without doubt the place for me. So I started to do okay in cricket, and I started to to achieve some things in cricket, which was really good. And then, so 2006 was coming around. 2006, yes. And my folks were still living at the Gold Coast, and I decided to take them on I wanted to say thank you for being so supportive throughout my whole life, throughout my whole journey. And things were going really well, and I just went and booked a Christmas holiday to Thailand, to Phuket, for my folks. And I rang them up, I said, hey, what are you doing for Christmas? And they said, oh, I don't know, you coming up here? I said, how about I've just booked us a trip to Batong Beach in Thailand. I know we've never been there, but I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for me. I just want this to be the most amazing Christmas that we've ever had as a family, because this is the first time we've been apart. I'm not living at home anymore. I said, fantastic, it's great. Meanwhile, all my mates just said, oh, we're going to book and come over for New Year's as well. So I was like, great. So I headed over there first with my folks. And I just remember we rolled in, I think it was Christmas Eve. And at the time, pinnacle moments in my life, I wanted nothing but the best for my folks. And we got to reception, we arrived, all excited. We got to reception and we checked in, gave them my passports, and they said, oh my gosh, Mr. Merchant, I am so very sorry. We've double booked your room. And I know your room is on ground floor, poolside, beachside. We've unfortunately double booked it. We're going to have to put you up on the 3rd floor just for tonight and tomorrow night. And at the time, you know when things just don't go right for you? And you think the whole world's against you and you kick stones. I think we all go through it. And you're just like, I can't believe this. How could this happen? I just wanted nothing but the best for my folks. And you question it and you get annoyed with it. And you get frustrated. But I end up just going, righto, whatever. And they end up saying, Mr. Merchant, we're so sorry. We'll make it up to you. I was like, yeah, okay. So we checked into our room up on 3rd level. Christmas Day came, similar to this, like the sun was shining, water was glistening, it was just warm, and you can see like tourists were setting up shop on Christmas Day, local beers were flowing, there was just a lot of fun to be had. And we had a beautiful Christmas Day, we ate, we laughed, we had plenty to drink, we connected with so many other tourists around. It was beautiful, beautiful day. And I remember just thinking, how good is this? It doesn't get much better than this. And I remember just thinking, this is one of the best Christmases I'll ever have, and I'll never forget it. And what's crazy about that is that if I look back in that moment where you've got no idea what's coming, but less than 24 hours later, my life would completely change forever. And I then run the foundation of that moment that has literally changed me forever. So we finish up Christmas Day, we head home, level 3, In the morning, I think we're all feeling a little bit dusty. We've all had plenty. So we get this phone call, and it's from reception. They're like, "Mr. Merchant, just letting you know, your original poolside room is available. It's clean, it's ready to go. You can pack your things and move down there." So we started getting packed up. Said, "Thank you so much." We started getting packed up. Everyone starts heading down the stairs. I'm dusty as anything, so I head out the back for just to get some food. And as I'm heading out the back and out a little bit, my folks obviously heading down to move into the new room. And at the time, it was just so eerie. There were no birds, cats, dogs, pets, no noises, no sounds. It was just really eerie. And I remember thinking at the time, this is really bizarre. And at the same time, the water had receded back, hundreds of meters. It was just flat ocean, and everyone was just really bizarre. There was fish flapping in the ocean. Locals were going up, picking up, collecting. It was just a really bizarre time. And I thought nothing of it. So did everyone else, really. I headed out the back. And in that moment, you just heard the biggest sort of clap, biggest thud of water that had just started to hit, and from where the receding of the ocean, it just started to just rise and just started to come towards the shore. And it was that time that everyone was just like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Boats were getting knocked over. People were sort of just trying to escape but going under, and you just still thought nothing of it. And from what we knew of it then, had this water and this surge of water that was just felt like 15, 20 meters high, 20 foot high, just plowed its way through the beach, up onto shore, and just picked up everything in its path and just over across the road, into the hotel, across the pool, picking up trucks, cars, throwing them into residences, into shop windows, and it was just mayhem. And everyone was just trying to escape the best they could, where they could. And you just realise of what was going on, and because it never happened before, everyone was just in pandemonium. And looking back at it now, it was at the time that the largest natural disaster this world's ever faced, which happened to be the Boxing Day tsunami. And I remember coming back because I just couldn't get back into the hotel because there was just too much going on, and trying to actually make your way back was really tricky. And once I did, ran up to the third floor, couldn't find my folks, ran down to the bottom floor and realised and looked at the hotel room where we were supposed to check in at, and it was filled to the ceiling of water. And I remember just thinking, I am praying that my folks aren't in there. And I'm also having this huge moment of perspective in that time. And I had these thoughts of the receptionist basically going, "Mr. Merchant, I'm so sorry. We have to put you up at level 3. We will make it up to you." And I remember thinking at that time, fuck, did you make it up to me? And it's crazy because it's this thing that in life, the universe has an incredible way of protecting you somehow, some way. You just have to trust it. It's either holding you back from something you're not quite ready for, or it's protecting you because there's something better just around the corner. Either way, it was protecting our whole family. That we just weren't meant to be in that room, because that room was filled, and there's no way that we would have been alive today if we'd got the way we wanted things to go, to play out. So that moment there of just like, just trust the process. Things are not working out for you, there's a reason why. Things aren't going the way that you planned, there's a reason why. You just have to go with it, trust it, and then trust that everything will make sense in the end. Even though we all go through shit moments and obstacles and we think, why is this happening? What's going on? But you just got to realize this is happening for a reason in this moment. So I was there for about 8 hours on ground, on deck, for the whole 8 hours. And I remember just, because I was able-bodied, I could just help. I didn't know where my folks were. I couldn't have any control of where they were, what they were doing. I could just help everyone else that was around that was in a genuine state of panic. I was still hungover, so it actually just sort of just calmed me a little bit as well. And it got to the end of the day, and youngster, one of the managers said, "Young man, thank you so much for all your help. You have to get on the next evacuation bus because we're potentially expecting another wave. You need to get out of here. Thank you so much for your help." So I got on this bus and we're heading up there's 3 evacuation points. We're heading up through them. And the first evacuation point, guests of the bus, they get off and they reunited with loved ones and they see them. I couldn't see my folks. We get to the second one and same thing happens. People get off the bus, reunited with loved ones. Beautiful time. I'm the last person on this bus because I couldn't see my folks. We head up to the third evacuation point. The driver turns around and he says, "Young man, you cannot come back down with me. You have to get off here regardless of if you see your folks or not." And I remember thinking in that time, your life flashes before you. And I was just like, head in my hands thinking, holy shit, it's like, this can't happen to me. But sometimes you're like, well, why can't it? And why not? And you look at it back now, and 250,000 people lost their lives in the Boxing Day tsunami. It's like, why would I be any different? And I remember I sort of had tears rolling down my face, and I was like, this is it. What am I going to have to do when I get back to Oz? And this is how I'm going to have to live, and this is what it's going to have to play out. And we pull up to the evacuation point, and there's my old man, and he walks around the corner, and he's got a Thailand Red Bull shirt on. And the first thought I'm thinking, when did you have time to immerse yourself in the culture and go shopping? When? It was my first thought. And he also had a durry in his mouth, and he had a smoke, and it was lit up, and he was ripping that thing back hard. And I was like, fair enough, it's a stressful time. I'm not sure if he even smokes at the moment. But I just held my fingers up and I was like, "Hey mate." And he was like, Cameron's here. And my mum bolted around the corner and she had tears in her eyes, and we got off and we hugged and we embraced, and it was just the closest I've ever felt with anyone within my family ever.
Wow.
And it was incredible. And everyone applauded and got around us and was like, "Cam, we knew you'd be okay. Your mum's been talking to us about, like, have you seen my son? She was describing you. You're tall, dark, handsome, all that good stuff." And I just remember thinking in that moment, it's like, you don't know me from a bar of soap. You don't know my mum. But I remember thinking how grateful I am for connections in that moment, how grateful I was for just how special the human spirit was, because they had never met my mum. They had zero idea if I was even alive, but they just kept hope alive for my mum. To say, yep, we've seen him. We saw him at breakfast this morning. He's going to be fine. I'm sure he'll be fine. And I think that's what us as humans always just want a little bit, just hope. If you haven't got hope, then what have you got? And that provided hope for my mum in that moment to keep her spirits alive and well until I got off the bus and we hugged and embraced, and she got her hands on me, and it was an incredible moment. It really was.
Wow.
Yeah. So, from that, we all got on a bus. We reunited. We all got on a bus into sort of up into the city to a hotel. And you can imagine, like, no one's prepared for this. And they let us off, and it was just this huge hallway of just single mattresses, one after the other. It's like 600 of them just lined up. And it was like, go for your life, free for all. So we all sort of, the people that you met, and we sort of grabbed your belongings or what you had left, and you sort of plonked yourself down and sat in a group. And definitely a pivotal moment that changed my life was we're all going around talking about our experience of what we just had experienced. And a gentleman was like, I had my wife, we had hand in hand, and the wave came, and I just held onto a pole, and the water rushed over us, and then when it receded, she was gone. And it was just like, it was real, it was raw, and it was devastating. And when it came to my turn, I had the same, I talked about what I experienced and what went through, and this lady said to me, she said, Cam, it just wasn't your time. And I remember thinking that as a 20-year-old kid, going, what do you mean it just wasn't my time? She goes, it just wasn't your time. Your time is not up. And I remember thinking in that moment, it's like, holy shit. So if this wasn't my time, well, when is? Because it could have happened in an instant. Because I think sometimes in life we just think it lasts forever. And you've got to realize life isn't a dress rehearsal. Like, this is it. And things can happen in a moment that can change everything for good, permanently. And I remember thinking, holy shit, that could have been it. Because some people weren't as lucky. And I remember thinking, this wasn't my time, so when is? And I don't know when that is, but I tell you what, I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to see some things, and I'm going to do some things, and I'm going to travel, and I'm going to completely shake my world up to make the most of it, just in case when your time is up is around the corner. Because before that, which connects to my childhood, I had a beautiful childhood. I grew up in a beautiful household, family, loving, orientated, white picket fence, like the dream, right? So before that, travel was not on my mind. To go experience things was just not on my mind. All it was I just wanted to do the same repetitive, which was nothing wrong with that. People do, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I wanted to have a family. I just wanted to meet my wife. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have my home. I basically wanted to live in the same home in Killarney Heights. That was it. Because it was the delight. And from that on in, it changed everything. Those processes, those dreams completely went out the window, and I went. I traveled because I remember my cousin coming back from San Diego or San Francisco, and he showed me these photos when I was a youngster. Same cousin who bought me Passion Pop. God bless him. And he showed me these photos, and I said, mate, how much did that cost? And he told me the number. And this is when you just had actual photos. And I went, what did you get out of that? And he was like, memories, moments, experiences. And I was like, doesn't add up to me. Why wouldn't you want to put that into a house and buy a house and all these beautiful things? And I look back at that and I go, oh my gosh, I get what he was saying. And then so I traveled everywhere, and had the approach in my life shifted in a second of yes, man. Like, let's go here. Yep, let's do it. You want to do this? Absolutely. Let's go. Let's experience everything. You live once. And then you realize you live every day, but you only have one life. And that's where it all changes. And those moments of just going yes, 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 again, brought me to my detriment, but it was bound to happen. That brought me to probably my lowest point.
Yeah, wow.
So that was a pretty big, significant moment in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, hearing you talk about it so far, it's like, especially I think especially the age you were at that time as well. You're sort of becoming like a man, you know? It's such a yeah, a time where lessons like that really stick because you're almost trying to find them being like, outside of the shelter of your parents. And I just cannot imagine what that would be like.
One thing I did realise during that time as well, I think when you're shoved up against a wall, you find out what your characteristic is like. And as a 20-year-old kid, I remember being on my own, looking and helping other people because I was okay. I think at the same time, there was another period where the next day we all got, from the hotel, next couple of days, we all got to come back in a bus to retrieve some of the belongings that you had. And I remember, full grown adults just in tears, petrified, so much trauma, not wanting to go into the hotel because of what could have happened. And I just remember, again, taking control of that whole situation and being a real leader and like, it's okay, let's set timers. We're all going to set timers to go and get what you need and come back in that time so that your partner that's sitting back on the bus would know that you're okay. And I sort of led this, I don't know, what do you call it, this adventure or this moment. And I look back at that thinking I wasn't trying to impress anyone, I wasn't trying to do anything. These were just the natural instincts that were coming to mind of when I was thrusted into this situation. So yeah, and it was life or death. It wasn't just this wasn't playtime. This was real life stuff. And yeah, and I sort of learned a lot about me in that moment. But again, coming back, and then for the next few years, it had its moments of what I dealt with and what I mean by saying that. I came back to Sydney and my folks went to the Gold Coast. I came back to Sydney. It was business as usual. I'd made sure everyone else was okay. I made sure my parents were fine, made sure everyone else was okay. And I just think the one person that I didn't check in on was me. It's like, how am I feeling right now? What's going on? I never had time to process what I'd just gone through. And it worked out for the next sort of year at least, because cricket was still a priority. I had to keep going on it. And it worked out for the next year. Every time I went to a party or a gathering and everything was fine. And then I'd start speaking to someone. They'd go, Cam, I heard you're in the tsunami. And I'd, yeah. And start talking about it. And I'd break out into massive sweats, huge sweats. And I'd be like, fuck, is it hot? Is it hot in here? Like, aircon on, and I'd have to leave the room and just settle for a little bit, not knowing any idea of what this was connected to. Just like randomly, is this just, until, yeah. And life just continued. Anytime I'd sort of talk about it, and I didn't realize at the time I was dealing with PTSD of the trauma that I'd gone through from the moment, the tsunami, losing my parents, dealing with people that are also going through trauma. And I just had to process it. I just submerged it. I just suppressed it down the whole time just because everyone else okay, no problems, great. And then but I also knew I haven't got time to worry about that. I've got cricket to achieve. This is my number one priority. I've got to make sure this is it. So yeah. Once I got back, cricket started to go well, and it was going okay. And then till I got basically approached by New Zealand Cricket to come over to New Zealand and look to play first class cricket in New Zealand. My mum's Kiwi, so I had a Kiwi passport. It was at a time when Cricket Australia was so strong. It was just unbelievable. So I think anyone that, if there's a slight opening of an opportunity, a chance to progress and fulfill your dreams, I took it. It was there, and I did. And I ended up having 2 years at Northern Districts in Hamilton. I had 2 years at Wellington, and it was a wonderful time. I achieved my lifelong dream of becoming a professional cricketer. I was training full time. I had a contract. I was traveling around the country. It was everything that I dreamed of that was playing out in front of me, yet I was so unhappy. I had moments of brilliance and happiness and fulfillment. It's like, I'm so proud of what I've done, but majority of it, I was really unhappy. And I think, again, it comes from, we achieve things in life to share them with others. And I'd done that my whole life, and you've always got people and loved ones and family and friends to share your celebrations with. Not that you're doing it all for that, but it's nice to be able to share them. I had no one to share it with. Everyone was in Australia. And plus I'd come into this environment from especially Manly cricket, where it was so community based. It was so beautiful relationships. So anything you're doing batting, there's round of applause and you're just supported. I came from that to a dog eat dog world in professional cricket, where I, as an Australian, come into this team and seen as taking food off your family's table. And I wasn't ready for that. I don't think anyone teaches you that. And that's where I was. And that's where it sort of came to. And I tried. I had great series. I had some great times. I scored my first class 100, it was just exhilarating moment that I'm so grateful for. No one can ever take that from me. It was what I dreamed about. The moment was just a celebration. It was ecstatic. I was overjoyed. It was brilliant. And it was an incredible time. Traveling around the country, doing what I'd love to do, but there was something always that just wasn't quite right again. And this, again, it stems potentially back to the same feelings I had when I went to the Gold Coast. I had a long-term girlfriend at the time, because we'd met a girlfriend that I went to she was from Canada, and we synced, we aligned, and it was a wonderful relationship. She lived in Canada, so then I progressed and I started playing in Toronto as a cricket coach and professional player in Toronto, opposed to going from England. And the next 4 years were incredible. I look back at it now, I was as happy as I've ever been when I was in Toronto. I had a purpose, I loved it, I had a loving relationship, I had great friends. I had a beautiful life. We traveled around the country and Americas and the world. It was just amazing. But something in my mind didn't quite realize that I'd created this home and my happiness, and I put that on ice because I always thought that Sydney was where I was the happiest. And so through that, I basically finished up my cricket career in New Zealand and finished a relationship in Canada, because I felt that Sydney was where it's at, where I was happy, and I sabotaged everything. At the moment, you think it's the right decision, and in life, we all make decisions that we think in the moment is the right one. And we look back at them and they're just not. But you got to forgive yourself, because in that moment you thought, with all the evidence and all the information that you knew at the time, you thought that was the right decision. And that's okay. And that's where I was. And I didn't look at thinking that home just becomes where you're at and where you're happiest. And that's where I was. But I'd let it all go, sabotage it all to come back to Sydney. And once I got back to Sydney, I thought that was it. But you realise that life just moves on. Friends, family, they all move on. So I had this image and this picture of what it was when I was a 16-year-old that I wanted to come back to when I was almost 30. But it's all gone. But I held on to this for so long. So the dots connected of, holy shit, that experience of what I had to go through when I was 16, that created this turmoil for these decisions that I made to keep coming back to that. But it wasn't the same. So at a moment then, when I was coming back from Toronto, Canada, I was in the middle. I've landed in Vancouver, and I realised I was coming back to Sydney with no job. I lost my professional cricket career, no relationship, family wasn't there, no home, no nothing. And in life, I think we've all got pillars. You've got, like career pillar, a relationship pillar, family pillar, whatever it is. And all these pillars have been pulled under at once. Sometimes when a relationship pillar goes, you've got the rest to rely on, they can lean on. Or the work one, you've got family and everything. They all got pulled at once. And I fucking hit the deck of life so hard. So I got to Vancouver airport and I've never experienced anything like it. I had this brain fog that just devoured my head and I couldn't move. I was absolutely crippled. And I ended up living in Vancouver airport for 4 days straight. And I remember realizing that this mental health thing, it's real and it exists and it is debilitating. I couldn't move. And I always find it interesting and funny that if you had a time lapse on that moment, it would have been me in Vancouver airport and just people circulating, going, having conversations with for a moment and then going again. And I just was there for 4 days. Until my folks, no one could contact me, no one could get hold of me, everyone was worried. I just went missing till I finally got hold of my folks. My dad was going to come over and basically get me, yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. And I ended up going to a hotel for a day. And it was freezing cold in Vancouver too. Great ski resorts, for me, not so much. And it was in that moment that I was in so much pain that I couldn't deal. And that was the first time it got to that stage that I tried to take my own life. And if it wasn't for a shitty shower curtain rail, we probably wouldn't be here having this conversation. But it snapped and I fell because I was done, and I remember thinking, holy fuck. And I remember thinking, let's find a way to get on this plane and get back home, because I just experienced almost the absolute bottom of it, and I had the opportunity to reverse a situation and a decision that I very much, it could have been permanent, but I decided not to, and I got lucky. So I headed back and realised that I needed professional help. I needed real help, because my mates couldn't help me, and it gets to a stage in life where you talk about the same story over and over again. Your mates can't help you. They want to help you, but it gets to a stage they just can't, and they don't want to because you're not helping yourself. So I knew that if I kept doing the same thing over and over again, I would have the same result and nothing would change. And you will remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change. And it got to that stage where I checked into rehabilitation up on the Gold Coast, Palm Beach, Currumbin, and I checked in for 6 weeks, and I was at a stage on my bed where I'd hesitated, and I thought, this is it. I think I'm done. And in that moment, I remember thinking, and something came over me, and it said, don't give up now. You've still got so much to achieve. Because I was like, oh, I've achieved cricket, I've traveled the world, I've done everything. If I'm done now, then that's fine. Because at the time you just think, I'm no good, I'm an absolute burden on this world, I've got no place here. No one wants me, I'm just nothing but a burden on everyone. So there's no point. Something came over me in that moment, and it was like, wait. You haven't met your soulmate. You haven't met your wife. You haven't had a family. You've wanted kids your whole life. So it reconnected me back to my original upbringing that was so beautiful, of wanting to do this, wanting to have the same upbringing that I had so I could give that to someone else, my family. And it was like, okay, you haven't achieved those things. So what does that take for you to be able to do that? Well, you need to get better. You need to heal and you need to get better. And I remember drawing a line in the sand in that moment. I was like, right, I commit to this 100%. It's not going to be grey area. I'm not going to be, maybe victim mode, yes, no, because up until then it was. And I think we all go through victim modes of just like, we're blamed, there's other blame from everywhere else. I was like, I am 100% accountable for my actions, my decisions, my choices, everything that it is. And I've got to start taking responsibility now. If I'm to find this joy, this happy, this fulfillment in my life. And I remember the universe came over me and I felt like someone was like, oh, Cameron, we've been waiting for you to say that your whole life, to take responsibility. Watch some cool shit happen. And I remember thinking in that moment, I've got to learn about me, about why I'm here, what I'm doing, how I got here, the decisions I made, and what I need to find this fulfillment, this joy, and this inner peace that I think everyone craves, this clarity. And I did. But I also gave myself the grace to say, this is not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen next month, not next year. You've got to give yourself time. It worked out 10 years later that I just so happened to be in a moment. I look back and every time I think about this, I go, holy fuck. It was my why, it was my purpose that kept me going, kept me alive to where I am today, to be able to tell my story, to say, all I wanted 10 years ago was what kept me going, was my wife that I hadn't met and my children that I didn't even know. And I look at them every single day now and go, you saved my life and you didn't even know who I was. And I didn't even know who you were either. So it was in that moment where I was at my absolute lowest in a hospital room, thinking the worst, and I just made a decision. I created my why, I gave myself hope, and I created the purpose to keep going. And I look back at it now and just think, fuck, that's incredible. It took its time, but you don't climb Mount Everest just by going to the top straight away. It's incremental steps, and some days you'll fall a little bit. Some days you'll take 2 steps back, then you'll find another step and learn a bit more and go, and then you just keep climbing, and along the way there'll be more fulfillment, some more rewards, some more learning, a heap of growth. And you start to figure out that along that way you start getting stronger, and you start realizing that the person that you once were, you've left them behind. You're still that same person, but you've created this whole new identity, this whole new individual, and you start being really proud of that person. And I think it's once you find that inner peace and that calm, you sit there and you go, I don't regret it one bit, because I had to be that person. I had to go through those experiences for me enabled to learn, to grow, to evolve into who I am today. And I think that's the biggest lesson and the biggest takeaway I'll take from my life and where I am today. And I use it every single day as fuel, as a reminder, as gratitude. But those lessons along the way, they come, and you just get a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit healthier, and new opportunities will find their way. But you've got to go out and look for those opportunities, because thinking I just want this happy, fulfilling life and everything's going to work out, and just sitting there and not doing anything is not going to work. You have to take action. You have to take some risks. You have to you have to put yourself out there, and sometimes they're not all rewards. Sometimes they hurt, but they're lessons, and it helps you accelerate where you want to be. And I started coaching. All I went back to was just coaching cricket. All I thought is passion, just coaching. And I remember thinking in that moment, at that time, I remember just thinking, throwing this ball, it was a Sunday afternoon, the sun shining just like this, and I remember thinking, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And I finished the session, and I was still in bad shape. I was still not in a great shape. And I finished the session, and the devil on one shoulder went, go home to bed. It's sunshine, but go home, put the covers over your head, and just go sleep in the afternoon. And the other small bit of hope said, I know you're hurting right now, but if you have the courage to just go to the cricket field that are across the road and just say hi, anything's possible. So I did, and this was at Curl at Hardboard Diggers at Ringer Cricket Club. And there was a game of cricket going on. And I walked over, and there was all these parents that are along the sides, and there was a young bowler running in, and I said, and I watched him bowl, and I said, oh, he just missed his run up, the young fella. And his dad sort of tucked his head out. He said, that's my son. And I went, oh, shit, put my foot in it here. And he actually goes, mate, he's actually, so I said, oh, Cam, we sort of know you from Manly first grade. We know sort of you. How you going, mate? What's happening? What do you think? And he said, mate, my son's actually looking for a coach. Would you be interested? I said, absolutely. So we ended up connecting. I ended up sort of coaching him for the next couple of months. We had this beautiful relationship and connection, and his dad just happened to be at the time the personal trainer of Michael Clarke, the Australian cricket captain. And at the time, he was working for Spartan Sports. And he said, Cam, I know how much you love cricket. There's a job opening as a cricket development manager at Spartan Sports. Would you be interested? I said, would love to. He said, get me your resume, get it to me, I'll get it to the top of the pile, we'll go from there. And again, trust where the world is at. Because I went, great, fantastic, I'll have a resume by your doorstep this afternoon. I've never written a resume. All I'd done is play cricket, had no idea what to do. But at the time, I was personal training as well. So I had my client who I was personal training with, and I was telling her the story. And I was like, I don't know how to write a resume. She was like, Cameron, don't you ever even listen to me? I'm in recruitment. Get me what you're doing. I'll create a resume for you in a second. Bang, got it, got the resume, sent it to him. He put it on the desk. The owner of the company rang me on a Friday. I just finished another cricket session. He said, how much do you love cricket, mate? I said, so much. It's a Friday afternoon. Everyone's gone for beers. I'm cricket training. He said, I love that. When do you start? I ran Spartan Sports for 5 years. I dealt with the biggest names in world cricket. Michael Clarke, Chris Gale, Sachin Tendulkar, MS Dhoni, David Warner, Steve Smith. I worked with these guys. I developed their cricket gear. I went into Sachin Tendulkar's house. I had lunch with him. I've been out drinking with Chris Gale, had wonderful relationships, traveled the world with David Warner. Like, it was the most phenomenal time. And again, along the way, I just learnt new strengths, new developments, business, and I just had a bit of my whole world until I had a beer, and it got to a stage where I was okay with me. I'd done the work on me, and I just started to find myself who I was. And that allowed me to, again, I was having beers with mates on a Wednesday. I was having beers with mates, and these two came up and they said, basically, hi, who's single? We're auditioning for, I said, who's single? I said, oh, my mate said he is. I went, I'm in for a good night here. And they said, we're auditioning, we're producers, we're auditioning for a reality TV show, for a dating show. Are you interested? I said, I'm interested, let's chat. Told them my story. Long story short, they basically said, Cam, we think we've found your bride. Would you be interested to get married? I was like, are you kidding me? In times in life, and one of the one of the 7 spiritual rules in Deepak Chopra's book is effortless ease. When you are just without desperation, with pure effortless ease, when you are just going about your own business, working on the things that you want to work, things in life just fall into place. They genuinely do. I trust and believe that. Sliding doors moment in my life. If I hadn't made that decision at that cricket ground, in that moment, if I went home to bed like the devil was telling me to, opposed to having the courage and strength to go and just chat to that family, I don't know what would happen. Sliding doors moment. I took it. It hurt. It was uncomfortable. But when we take the uncomfortable decision and that route, it can open up a world of possibilities. And it did. And I'll never, ever forget that moment. And I'm still so grateful for Duncan and Lockie and that moment. And life just works in mysterious ways and takes you to the next stage of your life. And the next stage, because again, the universe is open and says that you are ready for this next stage. If those producers came to me and said to me 2 years prior, we've got, A, they would never would have found me. The universe wouldn't have let them. But if they did, I never would have worked out. I wasn't ready personally, emotionally, spiritually, but I was ready then. And when I stood at the aisle and turned around, and that individual just happened to be my wife, Jules, and we just had this vibe at first sight. We connected. We were so soft with each other. We were calming. We were safe with each other. And we went through a credible process of 3 months filming Married at First Sight, and we had the most incredible relationship. So many different scenarios and circumstances. And we look back now, 7 years later, that was, and it feels like yesterday. And throughout that time, to bring in one of the most joyful moments in my life, to bring in Oliver Chase Merchant on the 29th of September in 2020 was just the most fulfilling moment of my life. Because in that moment, when he came out, and funny story about that is we said, we don't want to know the sex. We want to find out, reveal for that. You've got 2 jobs, deliver safely, don't tell us the sex. Ollie hit the deck, didn't move. The nurse panicked, hit the emergency button. All the doctors ran in. And then he came to. The nurse then went, oh, she's fine, she's okay. And we went, oh, thank goodness for that. Oh, you told us now, we've got a girl. Congratulations, we've got a girl, yay. We looked at and went, pretty sure it was a big set of balls right there. She went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's a boy, congratulations. You're not a girl, it's a boy. We're like, oh, shit. Crazy. But the emotions, but right then there, so the whole life story that I've just told happened down to that one moment where what that moment meant for me, not to just bring my first son into the world, but everything that I'd gone through happened for a reason, but it meant so much because I'd gone through so much for this very moment, for this moment to happen, and how thankful, how grateful, and how emotionally at peace I was with everything that had happened in my life. And it was one of the greatest moments I'd ever experienced. And it is, when you become a father, everything changes. And life is just a big cycle, and everything you put into it reflects into that moment. And it's been one of the greatest journeys and processes. And now Carter James Merchant, bringing Carter into the world, 2 little boys, 5, 1, a home, a loving partner and wife. And now I tell my story here, and I tell it on stage, and I tell it to anyone that wants to listen, because it's a huge reflection that no matter what you're going through, whatever stage of life you're in, somewhere along the way, you just got to realize that it's happening for a reason. And how hard it can be, if you find a way to keep going, life will show up for you in the most incredible ways. and you will be thankful for the challenges and the obstacles that you had to go through for where you are today, the person that you are, the character that you've created, and the life that you've built. And I can safely sit here knowing and so proud of who I am, what I've gone through. And I think for me, that's a pivotal moment of being proud of oneself is probably the most incredible, fulfilling emotion you could ever have with yourself. And through that, when you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm truly proud. And I have never done that before. And the moment I did that was when I was literally in England on the side of the road. I pulled over, pouring down with rain, and I just reflected on what I'd come out of, what I'd gone through, looked myself in the mirror, tears streamed down my face, and I said, I'm proud of you. I've never said it to myself ever before. And it was the start of something so incredible, something so powerful. So everything I do now is, rather than judging yourself, rather than being so hard on yourself, we just have to be our own best cheerleaders and our own best friend, because at the end of the day, we spend so much time with each other, with ourselves. If you're proud of yourself, there's nothing more fulfilling. So I sit here, and when I talk to someone about my story and what I've gone through, and I want them to connect to somewhere along the way of what they've been through, what they're going through. But I hope it can only inspire them, impact them to keep going and know that there's still hope closer than you think. You just have to just hold on, give yourself that best chance, and anything is genuinely possible. And I'm so proud of me, my life, the beautiful people that have been included in that have helped me along the way. And it's been a hell of a journey, and there's only got so much more to go. And that, I feel, is my life story so far.